Okay, everyone, hi. Thanks for coming along. Day 3, afternoon. You're all a little bit jaded from last night. I'm Alex Bowker. I lead developer relations for the Media Solutions Center in Europe. And we're the guys that bring content and services to the Samsung platform, from wearables through to smart televisions and everything in between. So if you've got product that you want to bring to Europe, come and find me or my colleague Elko at the back. That's the shameless plug out of the way. We're here to talk about the Galaxy Note Edge and how to develop for just that curved screen on the edge of the device. And we'd like to start with the quick kickoff video.
Galaxy Note Edge.
So hopefully you've all had a chance to get hands-on with the Note Edge now, and I think you'll all agree it's pretty stunning, and the more you use it, the more you get out of it. I've had one for a few weeks now, and they're going to have to tear it away from me at the end of this session. So the Note Edge screen, and the Note Edge screen brings essentially 3 things: an innovative revolving UX, the uninterrupted immersive full screen experience, and then quick access to a bunch of tools, and we'll go through those shortly. So first of all, you've got the Note Edge with several revolving panels on the Edge screen. This is controlled by swiping in a left and right action. And also there's a tapping interaction which allows you to quickly open applications. Then you have a pull up and down gesture, and that's for scrolling up and down when you've got more content than will fit within the size of the Edge screen. And finally, when you have the Edge on the table, you have a swipe left and right which wakes just the Edge screen up and leaves the main screen black. This is really good when you're in meetings because no one else can see that Edge screen, so you can get information and updates on things. So with the revolving UX, when you open an application, and we've got S-Planner here as an example, the size of the Edge screen reduces from 160 pixels down to 68 pixels. And that Edge screen becomes inactive. It essentially gives you a 16 by 9.5 ratio to play with. And you don't have to worry about the code required to move from 160 pixels back down to the 68, as the Edge Manager takes care of that for you. So in full uninterrupted mode, the Edge screen becomes completely undisturbed. So I use this. I travel 6 hours a day to and from the office. I massively love my job, hence I like the travel that goes with it. And I watch a hell of a lot of Netflix. And jumping in and out as you get those little notifications means that you've got to then buffer the content. So what you get here is the whole film playing along, and then the notifications of your email, of your SMS, of your favorite IM, just across the top, and you can decide whether that's something that you want to answer or not. Invariably not. And then similarly, that Edge screen can be used for your video or your photos, or your application can go and take control and put the keys that are most commonly used up on that Edge screen and leave the main screen there for the user to enjoy. And then there's also, you can use the Edge panel as a kind of screensaver. This is called Express Me, and maybe later, if we're brave enough, I'll build an Express Me side panel live with one of you as the lucky face of the Samsung Edge. So there's something to look forward to. And then also, we've got a bunch of quick tools, and these are all available with with the main screen off, with a swipe and a swipe down from the top, you can pull up 5 main tools, and these are the tools that we think you'll use most. But of course, you can go and develop these. So there's a ruler and a stopwatch in there, and a voice recorder, and of course, quick access to the flashlight. Essentially, these are just examples of what you can go and develop yourself. These are just ideas, and we're looking for you guys to go and be the creatives that come up with more. So, not Michael. Fresh from starring in the tech keynote video, Noam is going to come up and talk about Easily Do. I guess, can we switch to the device for this, please? There we go.
Hi, how's it going? So, as Alex mentioned, I'm Noam, and I run partnerships for Easily Do. And before I dive in and talk a little bit about Edge, I think it's important to give you some context on what exactly Easily Do does and why we found Edge so exciting. Now, a big part of our mission is to solve the problem of too much information. So today, you have a lot of messages coming into your personal email, your professional email, LinkedIn sending you messages, Facebook sending you messages. All of these apps are basically competing for your attention, and it causes a number of problems. So the 2 biggest ones, I think, is that when you have all these messages coming at you, it's hard to find the important information, and moreover, the other issue is that it's hard to find the important information when that information is relevant. And Edge actually helps us solve the latter part of that mission, right? It's hard to get at the apps. It's hard to find that email right when you need it, and it almost acts as a permanent second window where we could present our notifications and our icons in. So if, for instance, your boss sends you an email or your flight is delayed, we can present icons that represent those notifications, and when you click on them, they deep link into our app where you can see the updates. To give you a sense of why I think from a consumer standpoint this is really useful, if, for instance, you're multitasking and you're on a PC, right? Say you're writing an email, and all of a sudden Pandora is playing something, and it's playing something you can't stand. You have to change the channel before you just go crazy. All you have to do is you have to press a tab, and you go to Pandora, you hit skip, and you're done. And now with mobile, the experience is not as refined yet. A lot of devices are struggling to find a good interface to jump between apps quickly. Today, if you're writing an email, right, and you want to change the Pandora song, you have to click a button that takes you out of your email app and takes that email and puts it into drafts. And then you have to find Pandora, and then you have to click on Pandora, wait for it to load, click next, and then you have to go back into your email, open the drafts, and only then you can continue. Now, with with Look, you can have a permanent sort of panel for you, and that lets the consumer very quickly swipe to the right panel, hit next, and never have to leave his email app. So it makes it really, really great. For us, what we're doing is we're showing key content, right? So as I mentioned earlier, we're all about finding the right information and presenting it at the right time. So I also do quite a bit of travel, and on the panel here, you see all these icons. So when there's an update to my flight, our app can track the flight and let you know when there's an update, or just let you know general information about your flight. So when it comes to the day where you need to go, that information is presented in the side panel. You click on the icon, and it takes you straight to your Southwest itinerary. Here you have the departure time, all the information you really need to know. What else is nice about this is we're also showing updates to the flight. So if there's been a gate change, a cancellation, a delay, you'll see that information here as well. Now, what's also nice about our app is that we're not just taking advantage of the multitasking function of Look. We're also taking advantage of the immersive mode. So as you can see, our icons are pushed to the far right, and our feed is in the far left. It takes advantage of the full screen. It's really beautiful. You can move things up and down. As you see here, I have a reservation for 3 people on June 8th and all this other information. And it's very easy to navigate because you have all the screen real estate. Now, beyond the consumer benefit, there's also a benefit to the developer, I think. That's actually great, right? So if you're using a regular phone that doesn't have this edge screen, you're relying on the user to remember that your app is there. Right? And by integrating into Look, you'll be one of a few apps that have this capability. You'll have a permanent slot there. And if they cycle through and you're listed, they could click on an icon on the edge, and bam, they open your app. So it's great for engagement. And it's great for always being in the top of mind for the consumer. So I can't speak highly enough of this SDK. I think it solves a real problem for the consumer and helps developers tremendously. Beyond that, it's also really easy to integrate. We have a fun story about this. So our developers actually didn't have access to the device. So what we did is we worked with Samsung, and they provided us with a device. And our developers looked at the online docs, and they saw that it was pretty easy to take on, and they sent me an APK. And all we had to do is run it on the device that we had at our HQ office, send over log files and screenshots if there were any bugs. And there weren't many. And doing communication in this way, in a matter of days, we had a fully fledged app ready to go with Look plugged in. And this is it. It works in production, and you'll have the opportunity to install it on your Node Edge device as soon as it hits the shelves. Yeah, thanks.
We could switch back to the slides. So we'll get a little bit more technical now. So eyes down, concentrate, and see if you follow. So the Look architecture consists of three things. We've got the applications, which is one or more that use Look, and the Look SDK in there with the Look UI components, and finally the view system, which is the Android framework view system. So, as Noam's already suggested, the edge screen on the Note Edge is essentially a second screen for your application to use. And there are two types of edge screen that you can implement. You've got an edge panel that is an independent multitasking window, which can display things relevant to your application. And then you've got an extended app, which takes advantage of the whole screen, so to a 16:10 ratio. So when you're designing your edge panel, the first thing you've got to do is prepare the edge panel layout. This is 160 by 2560 pixels, and as I said earlier, you only need to define that. You don't need to define the slimmed down version of that for the shifted panel, because Edge Manager takes care of this for you. If your vertical edge panel is going to display text, and that text is wider than the width of the screen, then we recommend that you use a rotated view. And this is achieved relatively simply with the Android rotation field. You use text view control layout definition of 90. Okay, so when you're picking up icons within the edge panel, it's important that you take into account both landscape and portrait for this. So the vertical mode of your edge panel should be set to 160 by 2560, and the horizontal flipped to 2560 by 160. And if you don't take time to do this, as you screen rotate, you might find that your app looks not quite perfect or slightly ugly. So the first thing you need to do when you're creating your edge panel is to add a receiver to the Android manifest file. And the receiver's there and required to handle all the broadcast requests related to your edge panel. The receiver element contains the name of the provider, which is Cocktail Sample Provider, and that will implement the Look Cocktail Provider functionality. The intent filter element includes the action element that specifies the Cocktail Sample Provider and accepts the Action Cocktail Update broadcast. This is the broadcast that notifies the application to create the edge screen, and it's the only broadcast that needs to be explicitly declared. The metadata element defines the name and location of the cocktail provider info resource, and you should use com.samsung.android.cocktail.provider to identify the data as cocktail provider info descriptor. The cocktail provider info is used to define the properties of the edge panel, such as its name, its description, and how often to update the panel. The cocktail provider info data should be defined in the resource folder at res/xml, and for example, res/xml edge panel XML. The label and description and preview image used in the edge panel settings application to allow the user to select the edge panel to enable or disable. That makes very little sense. Label specifies the name of the edge panel. Description specifies the description of the edge panel, and preview image specifies a preview of what the edge panel will look like. And now for updating, we use update period millis to define how often the edge panel framework should be requested to update. It's worth noting that it's not an exact timing, so don't rely on putting in, say, 10 milliseconds and expecting 10 milliseconds for that. Here we have an example of cocktail provider info definition. So the name of the edge panel is defined in the string resource file with edge name resource ID. The description of the edge panel is also defined in the string resource file with the edge description resource ID. The edge panel preview image with the resource ID edge preview is located in the drawable resources folder, and the update period for the edge has been set to 30 minutes. The permit visibility option has been set to true, so that the onVisibility changed callback method will be called every time the visibility on the edge of the screen changes. Additionally, settings are available for the user to configure and have been implemented within the application in the com example edge configuration activity. And then the next step is to implement a class to extend the SLOOK cocktail provider. The SLOOK cocktail provider is a convenience class that extends the functionality of the Android broadcast receiver class, and the SLOOK cocktail provider parses and extracts the relevant fields from the intent received from the broadcast onReceive method. The onUpdate method is called when the edge panel must be updated, and when the user enables or adds the edge panel in the edge panel settings application. This method should implement any necessary initialization functionality, such as defining event handlers and starting any necessary services. The onEnable method is called when an instance of the edge panel is created for the first time, and this method can be used to open databases or any other setup activities. And the onDisable method is called when the edge panel is removed. This method should be used to clean up any resources that were created during the onEnable method. Now here's a quick overview of the SLOOK cocktail provider lifecycle. When the user selects or enables the edge panel settings application for the first time, the receiver's onEnable method is called, and then the onUpdate method is called. If the update period millis attribute is defined in the cocktail provider info descriptor, then the onUpdate method will be called at the frequency defined. But as we've already said, that's not an exact timing. And when the user disables or deletes the edge panel from the edge panel settings application, the onDisabled method is called. So here's a look at how to develop the view object for your edge panel. The Edge service supports the Android features, remote views, and pending intent, and to create the views and intents required for your edge panel. You should decide an initial layout for your edge panel and create an instance of remote views object using that layout. As a remote views object does not support every type of layout or view widget, you can only use the following layout classes. So that's frame layout, linear layout, relative layout, grid layout, and then the following widget classes of button, image view, progress bar, text view, view flipper, and list view. And don't worry, these are all on our developer site, so you don't need to remember them. Okay, so with the use of a ticker system, it's possible to show live information on the Edge screen and then have hot words, and that's something similar to what the guys at CNN are doing. This is really good because it allows you to leave your main screen off and have the Edge screen give you pertinent information, and then maybe you'll act on that as you see fit. We also have a small number of games available for the Edge screen. Again, really nice for sitting in meetings to play a game when you're a bit disengaged from what everyone else is saying. Yeah, I would never do that. No. So it's possible to expand the usable screen by joining the main screen and the cocktail bar together. And as you can see from this, you've got essentially 3 different screen ratios. You've got a 16 by 9 with a 16 by 1. Then you have a 16 by 9.5. And then finally, as you join the two together in expanded mode, you have a 16 by 10 screen to play with. Always worth considering when you're designing which of those you want to go for and how you make the Edge screen available to other applications. And here are a list of calls required to make those screens. Finally, this is an example of full immersive screen mode. So these are 2 games where they've got information across the top and allowed the games developer to keep the whole screen available and give the user a really quite bright and vibrant experience. So you've built your application and now you want people to go and discover it. The apps will be available in Galaxy Essentials, and the Galaxy Essentials widget is on the home screen of the Note 4 Edge. So, one click and you're straight into this. Then there are 2 sections there, one for downloading specific Edge apps, and then one area for downloading just cocktail bar applications. In order to get your applications added to the Edge special section in the Galaxy Essentials store, you have to add specific metadata to your Android manifest file. So you have to declare that your app's supporting the Edge panel, and you set the attribute to Edge single. If you are using the extended feature, then you set that attribute to Edge extended, and if you're using both, it's Edge single / Edge extended. Finally, with this new form factor, we've had to think very carefully about what happens when you pick the device up. And I have big, fat man hands. So when I first picked it up, I thought that the side of my hand would start to put input gestures in. But in fact, the guys have thought about this, and they've done a few things. So the first thing is there is no long press gesture on the sidebar. And the second thing is that it measures the size of the input gesture, and if that's not a fingertip, then it ignores that gesture. And also, there's no multi-touch on the Edge screen. And then this is really useful. So you can have just the Edge screen on. So if you can build an app that can work just in those 160 side pixels, you're really going to help the user conserve their battery without the need to turn the whole main screen on. This is the clock, and it now resides at the side of my bed and tells me it's going to be terrible weather and I need to get up really early. But it doesn't take hardly any battery power, so it's quite nice. So now I'd like to bring Ed on to talk about CNN and what they've been doing developing for this device. I guess if we stay on slides, please.
Great, thank you, Alex. So my name's Ed Thomas. I'm product manager at CNN, and in my capacity, I handle everything that's Android. So all of our mobile products, all the emerging technologies, wearables, television, auto, all of that falls under my purview. And one of the most exciting things that we've had an opportunity to work on recently has been the Edge product. Just to give you a quick overview of what CNN is, most people are familiar with our channel, and particularly with things like our election night coverage. We're actually bigger in a lot of respects on the digital universe. So CNN.com is the #1 news site in the United States for news consumption. These are all stats as of September of this year. We're also the #1 site for video news consumption, with about 1.3 billion video minutes in September of this year alone. Within our mobile division, we're the #1 mobile news site and have been for 7 straight years running. And we average, as of September, we're doing about 34 million uniques on any given month. We're also very big in social. We're the #1 and the #2 respective news handles on Twitter. Android obviously is a huge component of that for us. Our phone app has about 2.4 million uniques on an average basis. We do about 113 million page views. This is all as of September, which is the most recent data that we're releasing. We have about 7 million video starts. The tablet is also another strong platform for us with about 500,000 uniques and about 17 million page views. The point of all of which is to say that we're doing a lot of content and touching a lot of consumers on a daily basis. And so for us, being able to incorporate a new product like the Edge, particularly at the release point of the device, is a great opportunity for us to really expand our relationship with our consumers and to get out in front of people with a new device and a new form factor. There were obviously 2 main components of our process. One was the design process, and then the actual development process, which I'll get to in a second. In many respects, the design process was the much bigger deal for us. What we wanted to do with the Note Edge was really create a unique customer experience. We saw this as being a totally novel new type of phone, and we wanted to provide something that was a richer experience from our users beyond just simply having expanded content on the side or something like that. And so we spent a great deal of time as a team trying to think of what would be the way to make that sidebar relevant and impactful on our users, but then also something that was very simple and unobtrusive. We didn't want to have a situation where people had to continuously tinker or interact with the sidebar, because what we saw as one of the main features of it was that it's an easy, passive background element and a way for us to keep our content in front of folks as they were doing other things during their days. And so what we finally settled on was the idea of developing a sort of headline ticker concept for the sidebar, something where we can continually push out updated headlines and keep people apprised of what's going on a routine basis through the sidebar, and then also a platform to push out breaking news. So if there was a big news alert or a big event, normally we would be sending that out through a notification. We still do, but in the Edge's case, the notification pops up in the sidebar. So it's another way of keeping our users engaged and informed. The development process, as I mentioned, was actually very straightforward for us. So we leveraged a lot of the core Samsung technology and had the opportunity to work with some of the members of their technical team to iron out some of the details of our implementation. We had some issues, obviously, around the fact that the code base wasn't fully locked down by the time that we were working on it, but we're able to work through that with the Samsung team. And in terms of total project time, just to kind of give you guys a sense of what this looked like for us, this was about, conservatively, kind of a 6-week engagement. We probably were a little bit slower than most of you would be in terms of development. And most of that time was spent up front really designing and trying to work out what that UX would be for us. Once we actually got into development, it was about 2.5 weeks or so, ballpark, sort of soup to nuts to release final code. And if I'm being honest, most of that was probably QA. So the actual development of the sidebar experience was a fairly straightforward one for us. And with that, here's what we did on the Note Edge. So these are some of the early design documents that we put together. Basically, it's a swipe out to activate. Then there's a continual ticker going on the sidebar. It keeps you apprised of what's going on in the world. Obviously nicely branded with CNN and everything else. When breaking news happens, that comes up on the sidebar as well. Now, at this point, you may have all the information you need, and you may not need to actually enter the app. If that's the case, that's obviously totally fine. The point was we're just trying to get the content out to you. If you're interested in learning more, you can tap on it. When you tap on it, it pops you into the CNN app, and you can consume the content and see all the details. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Alex.
Thank you. So hopefully that's a pretty good overview of the Note Edge and the Edge screen and how you can develop for it. Thank you. Too kind. Who fancies a live demo? No one fancies a live demo. Because, right, this will go wrong, won't it? We talked about screensavers and how easy screensavers are. And so I'm going to build one in a few moments. So if we could switch to the device, that'd be great. I need to remember how to do this. So you swipe up, you click the icon, you say, go to Express Me, and I'd like to build a new screensaver. I'm going to pick a picture, and I took a picture of all of you just now. I might want to just pick the area of that picture that I like. Okay. You all probably look better in black and white. Okay. Then we will add some text to that. Okay. Done. Now, I'm not a developer, but that seemed pretty straightforward, right? And to prove it worked, to prove it worked, never works when you want it to, does it? Come on, you terrible thing. I know why that's not working. Somebody turned my lock screen off. Thank you, Alco. Trust me, that works. But I can't do that. I can't do that very well, and I'm not a developer. You guys are developers. That could be your brand. It could be your football team. It could be anything. It really personalizes the Edge and just introduces people to what's possible as you then build the discussion into, you know, that's a nice photo with a nice bit of text, but wouldn't it be better if it was a way of keeping your application alive? So thank you. I will ask questions, but if you've got technical questions, the Look SDK guys are just around the corner and will be way better placed to answer them. Yes? Yep. So it's a brave man that stands on stage and reveals the roadmap of Samsung, so I'm not about to do that. We didn't build it for one device. It definitely features in the future of our devices, yes. Okay, so yeah. I refer you to my previous response about roadmaps. I'm sure the guys are looking at how we can get the most out of this Edge and where it should be placed. To your point, yes, when you turn the device over, then your home button does go to the top. I guess the guys are looking into that. Yeah, so if they were all soft buttons, life would be a lot easier. You can swipe up and get the soft buttons, yeah. Yeah. Hello. So from what I understand from the Look SDK guys, it's not dissimilar to building a widget anyway, so the effort you've put into building a widget would be replicable here. I guess also we have to take into account the immersive mode and being able to use a super wide screen or being able to split into multi-screen as well. Yeah. And also, we don't know what the future holds, so the SDK might be looking forward to what happens with the future of the edge as well. Anyone else? Okay, so at this point, I have to remind you all to fill out your surveys. Good, thank you. And thank you all for your time. Thank you very much.